All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Live Fantasy Streaming by Sports Dente. I am joined by Umar and Josh. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Good.
Great.
Excellent, excellent. For everyone listening, sorry for the late start. That's on me, but we're here. We're still 30 minutes to kick off, so we're gonna get you your last minute fantasy advice. We're just gonna jump right in. We're going position by position. We're going hot starts, hot sits. Josh, let's start with you. Let's go with the quarterback position. Who are the guys you are wanting in your lineup right now? Actually, no, I forgot. This is my fault. We were going to change it up a little bit. We're going to start with DFS lineups because we're a little short on time this week. We
Yeah.
wanted to get you those so you have them for your lineup right before the game starts. So let's start. We'll start with Josh Still. I'm right on that. Give me your DFS lineup that you are most excited about starting this week.
So the DFS lineup that I'm most excited to start this week, between the two sites, I tend to lean towards FanDuel. So that's the pricing that I'm going to mention here. I really like Kirk Cousins or Matt Ryan back. Ryan should have a phenomenal matchup in that game at Pittsburgh. A lot of points on the board. Kirk Cousins going against the Eagles. It's a tough defense, but he's going to have to throw the ball because there's no Dalvin Cook.
Mm-hmm.
And those receivers, I mean, they're airing it out every single week. So I like Cousins or Ryan as my quarterback. For my two running back slots, I have T.J. Yeldon. Fournette's out again. I have Derrick Henry. I expect the Titans to control this game with defense and pound the rock with Henry. He should score for once. Um, Going down at running back allows me to go up at receiver. So I'm going Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, both in my lineup. And I'm going to grab Tyler Boyd because I expect AJ Green to be blanketed this week, and Tyler Boyd should have another big week in that explosive offense. For tight end, I'm going Vance McDonald, sticking with that Atlanta Pittsburgh game. I expect there to be a lot of offense, a lot of points. McDonald is a cheap tight end option if you're going to spend up on guys like Brown and Julio.
Mm-hmm.
For the flex on FanDuel, there's a flex spot. I'm putting in Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's back. He seems to be good to go. Gio Bernard is out, so he won't be splitting any time. They won't really have the option to ease him in because Bernard's out. So I think Mixon's a full go. And for defense, to go back to the Titans Bills game, I think the Titans defense is a lock this week. Somehow they're not the number one defense uh, price point. I don't know how that is.
Strange, yeah.
Uh, yeah, I really think they should be. Normally it's Jacksonville, but they're playing against Pat Mahomes. So I'm definitely going the Titans this week. That's my start for DFS.
I like it. Not to put you on the spot, do you know? Well, now I'm drawing a blank. The question I was going to ask. Umar, we'll just go to you, and it'll come back to me.
All
But
right.
Umar, we'll go to
All
you.
right. So I use the flip side. I use DraftKings as opposed to FanDuel, so some of my salaries will be obviously based off DraftKings. For quarterback, I'm rolling the dice. I'm going with C.J. Beathard against Arizona. He played pretty well against the Los Angeles Chargers last week. He was 2 yards short of 300. He threw two touchdowns. Yeah, he threw two interceptions, but they weren't his fault. I expect him to continue in a home matchup against Arizona, play pretty well. Running backs, I got Christian McCaffrey off the bye against the New York Giants. Weak defense. That should be a definite start even in regular fantasy as well as also in DFS. Similar to Josh, I got TJ Yeldon against Kansas City. They're not stopping anybody in the run game right now, so that's an easy play and also a cheap play at only 5,600 and DraftKings. That's a pretty good value play right there. Receivers, I was able to spend a little bit more with the cheaper option at quarterback and running back with TJ Yeldon. So I got Brandon Cooks against Seattle. Losing Earl Thomas, he'll be able to take the top off that defense pretty easily, get some deep scores there. So I like Brandon Cooks there. Um, where Josh did not like AJ Green, I do like AJ Green because he's a solid play almost every week in regular fantasy and DFS. So I expect him to really put up some numbers regardless of who he's playing. So I like AJ Green. And my third option at receiver, I like D.D. Westbrook against Kansas City. Kansas City's defense has just been atrocious, and especially they've been pretty bad against slot receivers. So I expect D.D. Westbrook to continue his good game last week into this week and get some more points and a cheap option as well at only 4,700. Tight end, I like Jimmy Graham against Detroit. All three starting options for Green Bay are questionable coming into this game. Randall Cobb is already out. Geronimo Allison is a game time decision with his concussion protocol. The only player that's going to be playing is Devontae Adams, most likely. So we may be seeing some rookie receivers playing this week against Detroit. This is where Jimmy Graham's stock really rises. He finally got into the end zone last week, so I expect that to continue into this week, get a lot of targets that way. The flex option, I like Austin Eckler to have a rebound week against the Oakland defense. Pretty cheap option as well at only 4,200, so I expect him to really do well in both the passing game, rushing game as well to give Melvin Gordon some breathers here and there. And then for defense, Ryan, you may like this one. I like the Broncos against the New York Jets. They
Love
contained
it.
Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City offense for three-quarters of that game. So I expect them as a unit to do a lot better against a very shaky New York Jets offense. So yeah, at 3,200, it's a bit of a steal in my book.
Yeah, if only football was played in three quarters, I would have been a lot happier come Tuesday morning. But yeah, my question, which Elmer actually answered for DraftKings, was how much TJ Yeldon was in FanDuel, which I'm sure it was similar. I don't know, Josh, if you know off the top of your head, but that to me is a must start almost just because of that Chiefs defense, what they've given up. We saw the Broncos kind of abandon the run. We can get into that. I'll get into that later. I can talk for an hour and a half about that game. But the run game was just gouging them. And they've shown that through 4 weeks that teams haven't been able to run. So to me, TJ Yeldon is almost a must DFS start or must start in any league.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Ryan, on FanDuel, TJ Yeldon is 6,500.
Okay.
Still a very cheap option there. I mean, players around that price point. Marshawn Lynch is 6,500. Carlos Hyde is 67. Alex Collins is 65. McCoy is 63. I mean, out of all those names in that price point, I like Yeldon
Oh,
least
yeah.
ahead of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good uh, showing point of who's going at that price range as well. So, well, great. Love those lineups. I'm going to get one before we start or get one before the game start. Well, let's jump into our other leagues then, or our standard leagues, I guess, if you will. Josh, we'll go back to you, starting with quarterbacks. Who are the quarterbacks you're liking this week?
So quarterback starts I like this week. Again, I said I like Kirk Cousins a lot. He's already thrown 10 touchdowns this year in 4 weeks. I mean, he's averaging per game. I take the over on that. I expect at least three in this game. Philly defense has a great pass rush. They're good against the run, but their weakness is in their secondary, and I expect, if you want to call that a weakness,
Yeah.
being how good the Eagles defense is overall. I expect Kirk Cousins to come out throwing this week. I like Stafford. Stafford plays phenomenal against Green Bay. He has a great track record. If you throw out the first week of the season, which was, a very unusual week for Stafford, throwing 4 interceptions, since that first week, he's thrown 7 touchdowns to only 1 interception, and he's averaging over 300 yards a game. I expect him to have a huge game this week. I like Phillip Rivers also this week. I mean, Rivers has been playing well. He's got his full complement of players healthy. He's not really missing any key guys on that offense. I expect him to put up big numbers. And I like, for a little bit of a contrarian play, I like Blake Bortles going against Kansas City. As we mentioned, their defense is terrible. They've been winning games off the back of their high-flying, high-scoring offense, not because of their defense. So I like Bortles with Fournette out, with Yeldon in. Yeldon's not the power runner Fournette is. He's going to make his money through the passing game. In my opinion. So I like Bortles this week as well.
Yeah. I like all those. Those are great. I think Stafford is a fun one to watch just because those divisional games are always interesting. But Stafford, like you said, does play extremely well, and I'm starting him this week as well. So I always like to hear that when you guys compliment my decisions. So Umar, do you have anything to add about quarterbacks at all for starts?
Yeah, no, I don't have any disagreements with all the ones Josh mentioned. I should also mention that I like Carson Wentz in that Minnesota Philly game. I expect that to be an absolute air raid, both type of game. So both quarterbacks are a good start. Another good start for both quarterbacks is the Pittsburgh Atlanta game. I expect that to be an offensive firepower show as well. As I mentioned earlier, rolling the dice, I like CJ Beathard this week against Arizona in a divisional matchup at home. I think he'll play pretty well. So yeah, those would be my starts for this week.
Okay, well, we'll keep it with you for some sits, and then we can bounce back to Josh. But who are some key sits you got, Umar?
I think we mentioned this last week, but Russell Wilson, he's just not been the same fantasy quarterback that we're used to seeing. And he's playing against the Los Angeles Rams this week, so that's a bit of a tough matchup for sure. Even with Akeem Jalil being on IR, that's still just overall a tough matchup just with the pass rush, the cornerbacks, everything you want to say. And against Arizona, he only threw for 172 passing yards and 9 total fantasy points. So
Oh,
if
I
he
know.
only did that against Arizona coming into Los Angeles, that's just spelling even worse of a situation for him. So yeah, definitely avoid Russell Wilson if you can. I'm sitting Joe Flacco against Cleveland. Cleveland right now is number one in takeaways. They have 13. So as strong as Flacco played against Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's defense is absolutely atrocious. So looking at this matchup against Cleveland, it maybe you may want to side with Flacco based on that performance he did on that game against uh, Baltimore, but yeah, I like Cleveland's defense overall over Flacco. So sit Flacco if you're thinking about doing him as a spot start this week.
Yeah, Cleveland's defense is becoming a almost powerhouse in the NFL. As weird as that is to
Yeah,
say, it just sounds strange rolling off the tongue.
yeah,
But
and Josh mentioned this last week where it's like I wouldn't be surprised if they become a top 10, possibly top 5 defense when all said is done for the 2018 season. So
yeah, I remember I was talking with a friend beginning of the season when James Conner went off on Cleveland, and he was saying, "Well, it's Cleveland. Anyone can run on Cleveland." And no, they can't. Cleveland's actually a good defense. That was just
yeah,
a good display in
Miles
Week 1.
Garrett, Miles Garrett's a monster.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that he was proving again. Not that he didn't last year, but he's proving more so his worthiness of that number 1 pick. Josh, any rebuttals or any disagreements, or do you have any additions to those QB sits?
No disagreement there. Wilson was on my list as well. I think that's a real, it's a hard sit to make because
Hmm.
most people who drafted Wilson drafted him, as the number 2 or number 3 quarterback back in August, early September. So it's hard to sit him. But I completely agree with Hummer um, about having to sit him. The addition I want to make is the opposite of the Atlanta Pittsburgh game where you want to start both quarterbacks. I'm going to go with the Denver and the Jets game where I want to sit both quarterbacks. Case
Fair.
Keenum has 0 touchdowns in 3 weeks. I want
Yeah.
to I want to let that sink in for a second there. 0 touchdowns in 3 weeks, Case Keenum. And surprisingly, the Jets defense is good. Their record doesn't reflect it, but their defense has been playing well. They're a top 5 unit right now. Um, and on the other side of the ball, I don't like Darnold whatsoever this week. The Denver defense has been great. Darnold doesn't have the mobility that Mahomes has. Most quarterbacks last week, Mahomes was making escapes out of the pocket with Von Miller chasing him down. That left-handed throw.
Yeah.
That alone, and Darnold's not mobile enough to get away from that kind of pressure. So I expect him to be rushed early and often. I expect him to be sacked multiple times. I just expect this to be a low-scoring defensive game.
Yeah. So in 2 segments now, you guys have brought this game up twice, so I appreciate that of last week. But
Yeah,
uh,
Denver against Kansas City, they easily should have had 5 or 6 sacks, but yeah, that elusiveness by Mahomes led them to only having I think 1 sack in that game. So yeah, they'll be sacking Darnold for sure, like 4 or 5 times easily.
that's yeah, that would be the thought too, and that's why, like you said in the DFS thing, I think they are a good uh, a streaming start or a DFS start for the Denver defense. But can I just say one thing real quick? I don't know if you guys are in agreement or if you even noticed, maybe just because I'm a fan of the opposite team. If I have to hear Showtime Mahomes one more time, I think I'm gonna
Oh
throw
yeah,
up. I think I'm gonna throw up. That was
it's
like,
only been it's only been 4 weeks, guys. You need to temper your expectations.
come
They're playing
on.
Jacksonville.
I
I
live in
wouldn't be
LA.
surprised.
Showtime Lakers, that was like a staple. Like that came
Yeah,
about after like the 80s and all those like superstar players. And after 4 weeks, we're already crying this guy Showtime Mahomes. Anyway,
yeah.
I digress. Let's move on. Um,
Oh no,
yeah, moving on to running backs. Josh, we'll keep it with you. We'll just kind of roll through them again. Who are your big starts you got?
well, like I said, I like Joe Mixon this week. It's his first week back, so some people might be a little hesitant, but he didn't. Let's remember he didn't have a major injury. They kind of just went into his knee and they just kind of scraped some stuff out. They didn't really have to repair anything. He didn't have any breaks. He didn't tear like an ACL or anything like that, obviously, because he was only out a couple weeks. So it wasn't a huge deal. So as if they say he's good to go, then I trust that he's good to go. And with no Giovanni Bernard to take away touches, I think Mixon could easily have a huge week in his first week back. That Bengals offense has been scoring a lot of points. I expect that to continue. Um, A surprise start that I have for this week, who I really like, is Ty Montgomery. Now,
Mm.
that's not a name you're going to hear me say very often as a start, but as you mentioned, or I think you mentioned, that receiving core that Ummer talked about, Allison is out, Cobb is out, Adams is going to play, but he may not be at 100%. He has that calf injury. So I expect Ty Montgomery could be a sneaky good play this week. He may not. He's going to count as a running back, but may not play the role of running back. They may, slide him out into the slot. They may toss him a lot of balls. So I expect him to score a lot of receiving points, despite the fact that he's listed as a running back. My last start that I like this week, another bit of a contrarian play, is Derrick Henry. I expect Tennessee to control that game with defense. That's why I'm playing him in my FanDuel lineup. I think Henry could score this week. I don't expect him to go over 100 yards rushing, but I do expect him to get the ball, 15, maybe 20 times, which would be a season high for Henry. And I think he can fall in the end zone.
Yeah. Question about Ty Montgomery, and
Yeah.
there doesn't have to be an actual answer. Do you think there will ever be a time, not only in fantasy, I guess, more so for the Packers, where they will convert him back to a actual wide receiver running back position, and maybe in fantasy we see that role where he gets that kind of asterisk where he can be played as a wide receiver or a running back?
I don't. Mike McCarthy was asked about that in the offseason, especially with them losing Jordy Nelson.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't expect that to happen. No, he said flat out, he's a running back. That's what he is. It would definitely help clear out that backfield, that whole committee mess with
Yeah.
Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Ty Montgomery. But when does Mike McCarthy want to make things easy? So
Yeah.
no, expect him to stay running back.
Yeah, which is interesting. Just yeah, with those injuries and him having the history of being a receiver, and anyway, okay. Well, as for now, start him as a running back. I like it. Ummer, you're up.
Yeah, I'll go through this pretty quickly. I like Deion Lewis as opposed to Derrick Henry. I mean, I think we talked about it last week, where the effectiveness of Derrick Henry is not what we've been expecting coming into this fantasy season. Whereas Deion Lewis has been playing pretty well, and this matchup against Buffalo is pretty tasty in my opinion. So I would pick Deion Lewis for sure. Matt Breida, I mean, I hate to be a homer, but I like the Niners in this game against the Cardinals. So Matt Breida, the Niners are sixth in rushing yards per game at 133, and the Cardinals are 31st in rushing yards per game allowed at 141. So it's an easy matchup right there. I expect Matt Breida to go off. I know he's questionable coming into this game, but signs are pointing that he's going to play and he'll be effective. I like Christian McCaffrey off the bye week. Giants defense is pretty poor, and McCaffrey has just been a beast both receiving targets as well as rushing targets. So even with CJ Anderson vulturing a couple carries here and there, Bishop McCaffrey is just too good to pass up as far as matchup against the New York Giants. And bit of a risky play, but Frank Gore against Cincinnati. For some reason, Adam Gase does not like Kenyon Drake for some reason, so he has not been getting as many touches as Frank Gore. Actually, I think it's about split, about 33 and 31, if I remember correctly, where Frank Gore has 31 and Kenyon Drake has 33. But Frank Gore has been able to do much more with those same amount of carries, and he's also been looking more effective in that offense compared to Kenyon Drake. So I wouldn't be surprised if Frank Gore finds the end zone as opposed to Kenyon Drake this week. So he could be a risky tournament play in DFS and also a risky flex play if you have some options that you need to fill in with some teams on the bye week this week. So I like Frank Gore.
Yeah, that has been interesting all year long with the ADP difference of when they were drafted, and but yeah, I mean Drake has just not played well and has not gotten. You would think he would have been an every down back with Gore getting a few here and there, but it's been split like you said. So, all right, Amr, well, let's keep it with you with some sits for those running backs.
Uh, Seattle running backs, I don't like any of them. Chris Carson, Mike Davis, whoever you want to insert, don't start them against the Rams. Lamar Miller has been a fancy disappointment as well, and going against Dallas, I don't expect that to be any sort of um, possibility that he'll resurge against the Dallas defense. So I don't like Lamar Miller. Uh, I think we talked about this last week as well. Dalvin Cook has just not been looking effective as well. So even if he's out this week, there's a possibility that he may not play. Even Latavius Murray's prospects don't look that good as well. So sit Minnesota running backs. LaShawn McCoy, I mean, once again, another fantasy disappointment. He's just not been looking effective as well. He's still dealing with that rib injury, and the Titans defense is pretty stout anyway, so I wouldn't start LaShawn McCoy against that defense. And as good as Carlos Hyde has been playing, Baltimore has a pretty good rushing defense, so I'd probably sit Carlos Hyde and Nick Chubb, even though he had those two long touchdowns last week. I don't expect him to build off of that, so avoid Carlos Hyde and Nick Chubb against the Baltimore defense.
Yeah, Chubb's more of a boomer bust play. It seems like at this point. Do we know? I don't know if either of you have heard if Lamar Miller is in fact dressing. I know came up kind of late on the injury report, and they were saying possibly not dressing. Have you heard either way?
I've heard he's not going to play.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
if he is, sit him. If he's playing,
Yeah.
sit him anyway. If not, yeah, obviously. So I would just keep him out of your lineup no matter what if you're questionable. All right, Josh. Any sits for you, or any additional sits?
No, I pretty much agree with everything Umar had to say there. Yeah, I mean, Dalvin Cook's not going to play. LaShawn McCoy, I wouldn't trust him at all. And to piggyback off of his Frank Gore, that he likes him as a sneaky flex play. I had Kenyon Drake down here as a sit. So I mean, I think we can go hand in hand there. Frank Gore still chugging along. Should get his AARP membership in the mail any day now, but he's still getting yards, still making it work.
Yeah, there we go, chugging along. Love it. All right, we'll just jump into receivers then, Josh.
Okay, so some wide receiver starts. I mean, if we want to go with the obvious, I like Julio, I like Brown in that Atlanta game, that Pittsburgh. I should see a lot of points scored. I like Calvin Ridley. I like Juju. I like everyone. I like start all your Steelers, start all your Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
I like Sterling Shepard again this week. OBJ, he's still the top target, but he hasn't quite been getting it done this season. No one's going to take Sterling Shepard over him, but while Beckham's drawing the better coverage, Shepard's benefiting. Just last week he was 10 for 77 with a touchdown. I expect maybe not 10, maybe somewhere between 6 and 8 catches this week, similar yardage, and he could find his way in the end zone. I really like Tyler Boyd, as I mentioned earlier. AJ Green is getting Xavier Howard this week, and I expect that to be a really good matchup. Green could come out on top. He has the skills to do it, but Howard also could shut him down, and no one would question that. So I really like Tyler Boyd. Start all your Lions receivers as well. Again, going back to Stafford, I expect him to throw for over 300, 2 to 3 touchdowns. Any one of those receivers. They're not quite on the same level, I would say, as the Rams receivers, but they're in a similar neighborhood where any of the three could pop off at any time. Golden Tate with all his, PPR catches, adding up, 80, 90, 100 yards on like 8, 9, 10 catches. Kenny Galladay's proving to be a big red zone weapon. He's really coming along in that offense. Marvin Jones, speaking of red zone weapons, is active. He should play today. I know he was a little questionable during the week. Start all your Lions receivers.
Yeah, I think I like that advice. Absolutely. Umar, any receiver ads?
Similar to start all your Lions receivers, start all your Rams receivers. I mean, Seattle's defense is pretty poor, and like I said, Earl Thomas is out for the rest of the year. So I really like Brandon Cooks. I really like Robert Woods. Cooper Kupp will definitely get lots of involvement as well. So start all three if you have any of those receivers. As we mentioned, the top 3 receivers in Green Bay are questionable. So Cobb is out. Jerome Allison most likely is not going to play. Devontae Adams will play, so that's a good option there. But start the rookie receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I mean, he's got a long name, and that could possibly it's interesting, but he's gonna get more involvement in that offense, obviously, with receivers being out. Another name to watch is Jamon Moore, but based on what we saw last week, Marquez Valdez-Scantling was getting more involved. He only had 1 reception though, but I expect him to get more involvement this week, so could be a risky play. As mentioned, D.D. Westbrook against Kansas City, I expect him to go off. And I like Devin Funchess against the New York Giants as well. So he should get some pretty heavy involvement as well.
Okay, great.
If you don't mind, I just want to jump in. Actually got a question sent to me by a listener here. He said he has a question between these 3 receivers. He can start one, and I know for a fact it's a PPR league.
Okay.
John Brown, Amari Cooper, or Calvin Ridley.
Ridley's been the hot name.
Yeah. I know what I think, but I want to hear from you guys first.
It would be
Give me the three again. I got
Calvin Ridley.
Brown, Ridley, and who? I'm sorry.
Cooper.
Cooper. Okay. Umar, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Ridley out of those three options. I mean, he's just been hot these last couple weeks, and Julio Jones is yet to find the end zone, where Calvin Ridley has found the end zone 4 times now in the last 2 weeks. So I like Ridley, especially as we've been hitting on. That game is going to be totally through the air, both sides of the ball. So I'd probably like Ridley. After that, I'd probably like Cooper, then John Brown.
I'll just say, beginning of the year, my offensive rookie of the year pick was Calvin Ridley, so I'm sticking with that, Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I think we're going to go with clean sweep here across the board. I like Calvin really best. I mean, Umar, you hit the nail on the head there. He has 6 touchdowns so far this season. Julio is racking up the yards, but he doesn't have any. I want every piece of that offense that I can get my hands on. The difference is I'd probably take John Brown second.
Oh, okay.
His issue has always been health. I mean, it's never been talent. He has
That's
so
true.
much ability, and now that he's actually been able to stay on the field, he's quickly become the number 1 receiver in that offense. He's overtaken Crabtree for
Mhm.
sure. And Amari Cooper is just too inconsistent for me. 1 week he's
Yeah.
hot, 1 week he's cold, and that he's getting Casey Hayward this week. I expect that to be another good matchup that I could easily see Hayward shutting Amari Cooper down. Carr doesn't seem to throw it to Cooper when he's blanketed in coverage anyway. It's not like he's getting a lot of targets and just not getting the ball. He's just some weeks he's barely even getting targeted. So yeah, I like Ridley, Brown, Cooper.
Like it. While we're on questions, I got one more than with receivers. Sticking with Ridley, but Ridley or Sterling Shepard? I'm going to start with you.
I'd probably still go with Ridley. The Panthers defense is actually pretty stout, both as far as like getting pressure on the quarterback and then the defense in the secondary as well. And I mean, let's just keep hitting the same note on the same record. Just start Falcons receivers, start Pittsburgh receivers.
Yeah, same. I have to agree completely with Umber there. That one's a lot closer for me.
Mm-hmm. Especially with
Agreed,
Ingram
yeah.
still being out and
Yeah. I'm gonna go Ridley there also, but I could easily see Shepard out. I think they're gonna be close. I think they're both gonna produce.
Yeah, agreed.
it's a good problem to have then.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Just plug them in and you'll be all right.
Pick.
Love it. Okay. Well, we'll get to a couple more questions, but real quick, let's just move to tight end. Give me just each of you 3. Give me 2 or 3 starts and 1 sit. Ummer, you can go first.
Sure. As we talked about, Jimmy Graham, he's a great start this week. Ricky Seals-Jones, he's getting more involvement in the offense with the rookie Josh Rosen in the lineup now, and I think he's slowly becoming every start. And I mean, I hate to say it, but George Kittle of the Niners. And then as far as sits this week, avoid Bengals tight ends until we figure out that situation with Tyler Eifert going out for the year. Whether it's going to be
Again.
CJ Azuma or whether it's going to be Tyler Croft, we don't know yet. So as soon as we can gauge off of this game, that's the that's the tight end you want going forward. But avoid them for now.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
I completely agree with Ummer on that. As a good tight end start this week, I really like Vance McDonald. He's been hot lately. Ben Roethlisberger seems to have a good rapport with him. I think you ride him, maybe we'll see another stiff arm out of him if we're lucky. I also like Jared Cook. I mean, this is a situation
Ooh,
where we've been fooled by him in the past, but he's doing it for now. So I mean, ride him while he's hot, and then as soon as he starts to show signs of that dipping, just get far, far away.
Yeah.
Him and Eric Ebron. I don't know what's going on this year.
Yeah, Ebron's another good one. I mean, obviously we already saw him play this week, but
Yeah.
as long as Jack Doyle's out and Ebron is playing well, plug him and play him.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, and how happy were players that that second swoop touchdown got called back on a flag, and then all of a sudden Ebron vultures that touchdown. So that worked out well for Ebron starters.
Yeah.
Maybe not the first one, since Swoop would have had 2 then.
Right.
But yeah, I did want to just kind of touch on the Pittsburgh tight end situation because it's been an interesting one. We see Jesse James kind of the dominant force in the first 2 weeks, and now Vance McDonald's taken over. Do you guys see McDonald being more? I mean, they brought him in to be kind of the focal point of the tight end position. Do you see it more moving forward as him being that, or do you see Jesse James kind of coming back into the fold and kind of taking away some of his touches?
I think Jesse James has been there longer, so he has a good connection with Ben. But I think strictly talent-wise, I think McDonald has the skills. I think he has the ability to be that number 1 tight end on that team. So I think if that ultimately wins out, talent goes to McDonald.
Yeah, and as a former 49er, Vance McDonald, I mean, I saw what his ability was here, and there's a reason we traded him. But me and Josh were talking about this earlier, where he used to have just so inconsistency as far as catching balls and just staying healthy. But ever since trading him to Pittsburgh, he's looked a lot better, and he's been able to stay healthy and on the field. So yeah, going forward, prospects for Vance McDonald look a lot higher compared to Jesse James. So yeah, as of right now, I'd probably roll with McDonald every week over Jesse James.
Cool. I like it. Well, as far as defense goes, Titans, Broncos, Browns, I think those are kind of our big starts. We don't really need to get
Yeah.
into defense too much. Let's roll through a few questions. I'm just going to rapid fire. I'm gonna reverse every other. So we'll start, Ummer, with you.
Sure.
I got a couple
Okay.
questions. Okay. This is kind of, you would never think this question would ever come in, but this year it's actually relative. Tyler Boyd or Odell Beckham?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd probably go Tyler Boyd because Odell Beckham just hasn't been looking as effective. So yeah, Tyler Boyd actually.
Yeah.
You can never sit. You can't sit. You can't do it. I mean, if you if it, you can't, I can't sit Odell. I feel like there's got to be another player you can sit for Boyd. You can't. He's like Brown, Julio, Odell, Hopkins. You
Mhm.
can't sit these guys.
Yeah, I know. It's just a strange question, and that's kind of the year you've had, but I agree. Um, Another question, kind of I'm not even going to pose y'all's answer. Aaron Jones or James Conner? Start Conner. Don't go with
Yeah,
that
easily.
Green Bay backfield, I don't think. Um,
Hmm.
Jared Goff against the Seahawks or Cam Newton against the Giants? Josh, to you.
Man, that's another hard one. I mean, it's hard to go.
Yeah.
I would. It's kind of a situation like the last question. You can't bench Cam. You
Hmm.
just can't. I mean, Goff is hot right now. I could see Goff having a huge game, but I will almost never bench Cam Newton. The type of with his running ability and the fact that whenever they get near the end zone, he is the goal line back.
Yeah,
You know,
Hmm.
team.
Hmm.
I can never bench Cam.
yeah, I agree. And Goff being in a divisional game, I like Cam against the Giants as well. As hard as I say after Goff's 5 touchdown, 465-yard performance last week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is what it is. Okay, tight end question for you, Ummer. Kyle Rudolph or Jordan Reed?
Jordan Reed. As long as Jordan Reed is healthy, that guy is a starter every single week. But as soon as he goes down, that's when you want to obviously go with any other options. But he's healthy, so start him.
Yeah,
Love it.
I agree.
Okay, I'm kind of going through some of these to whittle them out. I know we're about game time right now. Calvin Ridley, Corey Davis.
Oh man, that's
I still like Calvin Ridley because
yeah.
Corey Davis will face Tre'Davious White in that Buffalo defense, so it may be not as good of a game as he had last week. So I know it's Buffalo's defense still, but yeah, I think it's just like I said, same note, just Calvin Ridley for sure.
Calvin Ridley over a lot of people.
Yeah. All right, last one here. Flex PPR. Robert Woods, Amari Cooper, Keelan Cole, or Philip Lindsay?
Robert Woods,
Woods. I like it.
easily.
Yeah, Robert Woods, I think so too. Yeah.
Definitely, I would not do Cooper at all. Cole, toss
No.
up. For me, it'd be between Lindsay and Woods, but yeah, I think Woods is the safer bet. So,
Hmm.
cool. Well, there you have it. I think games are kicking off right now, so let's just go. We'll wrap this up. Gentlemen, appreciate you as always. Fun as always. Hopefully that helps some people out there. But apologies again to everyone out there for the late start. That was on me. We'll be back at it 8:30 next week. Anything else? Anything you guys want to add before we sign off?
Nothing
No.
on my end.
Good luck everyone in your Week 5 matchups.
Exactly.
Yeah, happy betting. Gentlemen, fun as always. Appreciate it. Enjoy your Super Sunday.
Thanks, you too, Ryan.